Eudaimonia is a Greek word and it means human flourishing. And when I
Mm,
opened our firm, I wanted something that meant something to me. And I wanted that it was representative, indicative of what was going to happen once the moment you crossed our threshold. When you step into our firm, step into our practice, you're not going to go out the same way you came back in. And
mm.
as long as we can have signs of flourishing and moving toward your health and wellness goals, that's our goal.
Are you burned out, overwhelmed, not managing stress well? Have you lost that fire for a profession that you loved? Are you a physician that trained over a decade for a career you now resent? I'm Dr. V, and I'm a burnout survivor. I call myself the Harriet Tubman of healthcare because I'm free and I'm coming back to get you so you can be free too. Let's move from fed up to fixing it. Although I'm a doctor, this does not make me your doctor. The information on the podcast, including opinions and recommendations, is intended for informational and educational purposes only. Such information is not intended to be a substitute for the advice of an appropriately qualified and licensed physician or other healthcare provider. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Office Visits with Dr. V. I am your host, Dr. Benita Vernado, also known as Dr. V, and I am happy to share with you the Burnout series. We're morphing and moving through health and wellness, and burnout is something that we all deal with. I am highlighting physicians, but everybody deals with burnout. And what I hope will come out of this is that you'll know how to identify it, what it feels like. And then B, you'll have some tools or just even the courage to ask for help. And so I'm inviting folks on who potentially, well, we'll let Dr. Laurena White tell us if she was burned out, but something something wasn't right. And they did something about it. They went in another direction. And you all know my story. I was in that place for 5 years and the cavalry wasn't coming to save me. And so I had to pull myself out. And so what I want you to glean from this episode is to listen to how Dr. White pulled herself out and made a new course for herself, and maybe you won't be stuck in that place for 5 years. So, without further ado, I would like you all to welcome, with a finger snap, Dr. Laurena White, OBGYN and reproductive endocrinology integrative physician. Yes, welcome, Dr. White.
Welcome and thank you for that wonderful introduction.
You are welcome. So look, I'm going to let you do your real intro, your real bio, because I think I left out a few titles. I think I left out acupuncturist and herbalist. So for my listeners, who are you, Dr. White?
Well, my name is Laurena White. I am an obstetrician gynecologist, reproductive endocrinologist by original trade. However, due to some degree of burnout and just misalignment or malalignment,
Mm,
I have become an integrated reproductive medicine and women's health specialist. I have opened my own firm, and now I'm actually practicing the way I really thought I was going to be practicing when I originally thought I'd become a physician, a provider, and a practitioner. And so, yeah, burnout, it was not probably in the way that most people experience burnout, but it was definitely due to some misalignment, malalignment, and
mm.
just not on the path that I had originally set out for myself.
Wow. I like the way you say misalignment. I think that sounds better than burned out. And really, it's like because you're misaligned, then you get burned out.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
I like that. I like that. That sounds soothing to my ears because if you're misaligned, you can just get back in line and you'll be fine. So you said a few things there. You mentioned what I thought I would be doing.
Mhm.
So it sounds like at some point you were not on the path that you thought you were going to be on. So my question is how did you get off course?
Well, I had the original, thought and theory that I wanted to be a physician. And, years ago, there weren't, midwifery was not the thing that it is today. And I think going back, I go back and forth, would I have changed? Would I have chosen midwifery? And I'm still not sure if I would have or not because there's still that surgical component that I loved
Yeah.
when it's necessary.
Mhm.
And I really liked being able to be a surgeon and a clinician at the same time. And that part was intriguing to me and exciting to me because I was great at both. I mean, I am great at both. And, had this misconception of what I thought I was going to be doing every day when I went to work. And after a long time, I'd say probably well over 10 years, I realized I was being a hormone dispenser, a painkiller, pusher, or a surgical tech.
Mhm.
Like those were the only three tools I had in my toolbox: birth
Wow.
control pills, surgical intervention, or pain medicine. And it was for things that and symptoms that there were other resources for, but that I wasn't allowed to really discuss in a way that I could put it in their medical chart. And if I can't write it in your chart, there's due to or fear of
Right.
some type of retribution or punishment or, whatever, then I'm thinking that probably is not this is not kind of the way I want it to be because now I know there are other things that are out there. I know there are other tools that are available, but I can't readily advocate for them in a way that I feel like I could and should. Not just from my personal life, but also from things I've learned from my grandmother and my family that I, use or that they employed when I was growing up. So I started to see things from a different light and that's where the kind of misalignment started. I loved the work that I was doing. I just didn't love how I was doing it.
How you're doing it.
Yeah. And that was kind of where things were shifting because I loved my clientele. I worked at a federally qualified health center to begin with because I wanted to serve. I wanted to be with the underserved. I wanted to be with indigenous and populations, places where, healthcare it was not just under resourced, but underserved. I wanted to be with those populations. I wanted to work with those populations so that I could go to work and know that I was making a difference. Seeing people who were not only not seen, but not heard, not
Uh-huh.
valued in a medical system that is pretty much money based. And I wanted to do more
Ooh,
than just make a salary. I
ooh.
wanted to actually make a difference.
Wait, did you say money based? What are you talking about? We take care of people. We are here to help. What you talk about money based?
Uh-huh.
What is that?
Well, when you add a pharmaceutical industry and pretty much every doctor's office you go in has a pen or a pad or something that has a pharmaceutical drug on it, they're getting a kickback from someplace. So yes, they're making money, by seeing you, but insurance isn't reimbursing things that the way they used to. So
Mhm.
there has to be
Mhm.
some other way to make up, those salary differences. And this is a disease management system, no matter which way we want to look at it, and not a health management system or
That's
health
it.
care system. And so I didn't want to send, clientele to get pharmaceutical drugs or, pain medicine that was just going to mask symptoms but not address them.
Right.
And my whole philosophy is deal with what is underlying all that and knock out a couple symptoms at a time versus just chasing the pain or just chasing the X, Y, or Z and really figuring out why are all these things existing in the first place.
Absolutely. Which that's why I love lifestyle medicine. It gets to the root
Yes.
cause, which is really and I think, you say it's a money-based system, and yes, it is. And honestly, for the amount of money we spend in healthcare, we have horrible outcomes. I mean, we should be the
Horrible.
healthiest country on the globe, just based on what we invest in healthcare, and we're not.
Yeah.
So I think that when you say misalignment, I think most physicians or anybody in the healthcare industry, you come in wanting to heal people and wanting to help, and
Right.
and band-aids after a while just don't cut it because you keep
Right.
seeing the same people with the same issues, and I'm not taking my medications or I couldn't afford it. It's like
Mhm.
the band-aid is not only does it not work, some people don't have access to the band-aid. So
Right. Right.
you've mentioned some things about the tools in your toolbox, and I think you have an amazing, like, origin story. I said
Right.
origin story, guys. I feel that people have a purpose. I know everybody has a purpose. They come here to do something for the world. And I just don't think that God plops you down in a family just happenstance and random. And
Mhm.
so tell us about your childhood, and what you learned from your grandmother that helped you become the provider, the healer that you are today.
Wow. Well, a healer is a big label, and I usually try to say I facilitate the healing. Only God can heal,
All right.
and I'm just an instrument, a blessed instrument,
Mhm.
and I help with the facilitation. But whether it be my hands, my knowledge, my education, those are all blessings, and I would not
Right.
have them if for not for the grace of God. But to answer your original question, wow, I was a migraine sufferer pretty much from as early as I can remember, even before I went to preschool. My mom had no clue what was going on. She immediately thought that I had a, brain tumor or something because there was no reason that a little girl before she even, has been exposed to the ills of the world should be having literally debilitating pain, headaches, and I couldn't even really articulate it. I would just cry and hold my head. And my mom was scared. She had me seeing all types of specialists and all types of things, and no one could find an answer. And their only answer was to put me on high doses of these pharmaceutical drugs. And my mom said, no, that's not going to happen. She's too young, and I don't know how this is going
Mm,
to affect her later on.
good for her.
But if that's your only answer and you can't find anything, like literally cannot find anything in her brain, in her skull, then we've gotta, do something else. And so I had a wonderful grandmother. I call her my first herbalist. And, she just knew. And that was a woman who definitely had the healing touch, healing
Mhm.
hands, and just a healing presence. And I remember going to her house, and whenever I would go, inevitably I would have at least one migraine, either coming out of one, going into one, or about to
Wow.
have one.
Wow.
Um, because this wasn't a once a month thing, it was like a once a week occurrence, and I would just had headaches that were unexplained. And so I would go to my grandma's house, and she lived in North Carolina, and when she either I was having one or one was coming on when I was at her home, and she would just go out to the backyard and start picking twigs and leaves and roots and stems and just all kinds of things. And she would come in, make a poultice or brew something up on the stove, and wrap my head, wrap my feet, my groin, my underarms. I'm trying to remember all the places, and rub some stuff on my head. And
Wow.
literally, and I'm talking, and it sound, but I can remember like being just crying and being in tears. And then as soon as she would like wrap my body up, like before she could finish, the pain was gone, like gone, gone.
Ooh.
And it was like I could sleep. I mean, I was crying so much that I couldn't even go to sleep. I was, that was my mom's other concern. She doesn't sleep because she's always in pain. And we all
Gosh.
know during that time, when you're not sleeping, that's the restorative time. And as a youngin, you got to get that sleep time in
Mhm.
because we're, balls of energy. But I wasn't ever sleeping either. So I was a teeth grinder, all those things. Just because I just, between pain going in or coming out of these painful episodes. And she literally would wrap me up, poultice, boil stuff up, have me drink some stuff.
Wait,
And
wait,
I mean,
wait. Stop, stop, stop,
yes.
stop. Okay, that's the second time you said poultice. I don't know what
Mhm.
that means. And the
Oh, yeah.
second thing is, okay, for me and our listeners, she's wrapping you. What is she wrapping you with, and how is she incorporating the herbs with the wrap?
She would start by if it was something that she was like a poultice first is like a pasty type of something. Think of like almost dried glue or like
Okay.
something like not thicker than gravy,
Mhm.
but just something that was solid enough that you could spread. But she would spread it over my forehead, on the soles of my feet, right around my arches, my underarms, and my groin. And then she would take, and again, not gauze, but like old rags and, like, wrap my head with them, wrap my groin, not really my midsection, but literally in my that part where your lower abdominal area meets your upper thigh,
Mhm.
my underarms, and then almost bind my feet, and by the time she got to the feet binding, I remember most of the time I was asleep, and I hadn't slept in, days.
Wow.
Some of the stuff would get super, super hot, I remember, not so much that it was burning my skin, but I just started sweating. And I'm not talking like, that kinda like that fever break, but I didn't have a fever. So I would know that like some of those toxins that were in my body from whether it be food or anything else, it was leaving my body and just kind of like getting that fever so that all those things could be released. And again, I didn't know what any of that kind of stuff was, and neither did my mom, but she knew, and it just reminded me of the value of our connectedness to nature, which she
Mhm.
had. She was a
Mhm.
farmer. So she knew, the cycle, the harvest cycle of things, when to plant things, when to harvest them, how to use the stems, the berries, the flowers, the leaves, like the roots, every aspect of a plant for certain medicinal uses. And while I didn't know it then and didn't value it then, when I got to where I am now, I'm thinking, pharmaceutical medicine, the active ingredient, if you look on the back of anything, there's a genus species, and that's a plant.
Mhm. Yeah.
So let's bypass that and use the active ingredient and cut out all that other fluff and the stuff that causes all the other side effects
Side
and just use the
effects.
active ingredient. And that's how I became an herbalist because I really did believe in the power of not just natural medicine, but plant medicine and using that active ingredient for healing.
Yeah. Yeah, that just kinda gives me chills when I hear that, I can see her going back to the backyard and picking, and I can see her
Mhm.
in the kitchen, like, boiling stuff, and
Yes.
to know that she didn't have to have a prior authorization. She
She
didn't
didn't have
have to
any
have
schooling.
she didn't have no school, and she didn't have to
Nope,
have $100. I mean,
nope.
like, it was there available to her. And, I believe that, if you put the right things in the body and do the right things for the body, it can heal itself. But
Amen.
also, if there is a healing, God has put it, within reach for
Mm,
us. And, so I love to hear those stories. And for my listeners, I really, I was trained as a, traditional physician, but I have really started to expand my thought process and understand that, herbalists are acupuncturists. Like, that is another tool, and it is helpful, and it's not voodoo. Like,
right.
it's real science. And so,
Yes.
so let's get back to, Dr. Laurena White, who is,
Yes.
I'm up here pushing pills and pushing hormones, but deep down, we had that little herbalist, that exposure to the herbalism. Is that
Yeah,
right?
herbalism. Uh-huh. Yes.
We had
Uh-huh.
the exposure to herbalism at a very young age. And so I just feel like that was always potentially in the background, which is why you
Right.
were comfortable with,
Right.
all of the pharmaceuticals. So
Yeah.
tell us about, after you made the realization, like, this isn't it, I misaligned. What did you do from there?
Well, it was kind of all really disjointed. I pretty much knew after when I left the a federally qualified health center, it wasn't again the job, it was the people. And I felt like it was an us versus them, but I was always the people that looked like me were always the them. And no matter how many acronyms I have behind my name, no matter what schools I went to, I'm always going to be a them. And my thing is, but these are the people that I'm serving with. They look like my aunts, my uncles, my neighbors, my
Mm,
cousins, my
yeah.
sister, my family. And it was always like they were getting in the way. And my thing is, but that's who we're working for. And I had a really hard time continuing to serve, and it was hard because my thing is if I leave, then who is going to
Yeah.
appropriately manage? Who is going to take care of these people? But I found that the office politics and the day-to-day conversations and, I was being, punished for, spending too much time with, my patients and just a whole bunch of other just nonsensical that stuff that didn't have to do with the work that I was doing. But pretty much my presence in the office, that was getting in the way from me showing up in my whole self for the people that I wanted to serve. And so I realized I had to make a shift there, not in terms of doing something, a different job, but how I did my job. And right around that time, I had the opportunity to go to Cuba. I lived in Cuba for 6 years. I lived in Haiti for 2. And that's where
Wow.
I started to really realize, like, okay, I can do this. And really learning how to formalize my training and just really being in an environment where, like, whole person health and care was built into the whole system. I mean, not
Mhm.
just the healthcare system, but it was like into the government. It was into the providers. Like everybody knew you have access. and you're able to get the treatment that you need in a timely fashion. And there was no insurance. There was none of these barriers to health that so many of us are experiencing, whether we're underinsured or not insured, or there has to be a tier for this
Huh,
reimbursement.
huh,
Like there's none
oh,
of that.
oh, okay. So look, my mind is like blown. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So what when you say it was incorporated into the whole system,
Yeah.
like, okay, and I hear you say there was no insurance, like
None.
what else does that look like when you say it's incorporated into the whole system? What were
Um,
they
think
doing that we're
about
not doing?
think about I mean, what our definition, the closest I can think of is like what our definition would be for universal healthcare. And I think even with universal healthcare, we probably still find a way to put insurance in there. But I mean, I really imagine a system where the hospitals, whether they're privately or publicly funded, you can go to. If the ones across the street or the one that's far away, you don't have to have any, what do they call pre-authorizations? There's no in of network, out of network. You want to go to a doctor, the one that's closest to your house, you go to. You don't, I mean, and the doctors live in your neighborhood. So like doctors are making house
Wow.
calls.
Wow.
Um, that was another thing I enjoyed when I was there. I lived in the neighborhood where I worked. So it wasn't necessarily like, oh, I'm gonna work in, I don't know, Baltimore, but I'm gonna live, like, outside of Baltimore where I'm not living where I work. You work where you live and you live where you work, so now you know
You
your
know the
neighbors,
people,
you
you're
know the
taking care of your
people.
neighbors. Oh, that's
Yes.
phenomenal.
And you're also, like, doing house calls, not like, you're coming to my office. No, you're going not every single appointment, but you're going to the home to see what are some of the other household things that are going on here that are
Wow.
impeding or affecting this person's health and wellness journey, or ultimately affecting their healing journey. And that sheds a whole bunch of light because for most of us, maybe in midwifery, maybe doulas, they go to the homes, so they're seeing some things, but the average physician never sees what the inside of, their
Nope.
patient's home looks like.
Nope.
And even the ones who do concierge medicine, you're still not going to the home. You're, rewarding them for, coming to your appointments and things of that nature, but you're not necessarily seeing their home environment. And without seeing someone's home environment, yes, they're coming to you by themselves. You see them one on one. But then when you go into their home, you see, oh my goodness, there's, six cats here, two dogs. There's a two-bedroom apartment and there's six people living here, but there's only two bedrooms.
Mm,
So what's really
mm,
going on?
yeah.
There's 2 smokers, a lot of other different things. And so there's some dynamics that, yes, you can give them all the coaching and the counsel that you can possibly give, and it can be awesome. But if there's no way to execute that once they go back to a home that no one is supporting their choices, for health and wellness, then it's gonna be challenging. So you really have to address that as well. And there's no way to necessarily know that if you're just seeing someone for, in the conventional medicine system, maybe 15 to 18 minutes, you can't even get to what's going on at
Yeah, you
home.
can't
Yeah, it's
yeah.
impossible. So just being able to again see how whole person universal healthcare works, it was like, this is more what I thought. This is more aligned with who I am because
Okay.
it's actually service. It's
Ding,
not.
ding, ding, ding,
Yeah,
ding. There we
yeah,
go.
yeah,
So, that's you said 6 years and 2 years, so that was 8 years
yes.
outside of America,
Yeah,
outside of our health system.
yeah.
So, what brought you back to the United States, and what did you do? Y'all listen to this. What did you do once you got back?
My nephew is what brought me back. He
Ah,
said, "Lala, are you ever coming back home?" And at that time, my nephew was probably about 4. And it broke my heart, because at that time, he was seeing me, when I would come home for, Christmas sometimes, or when I would come home randomly for a break. I would come home in summer, but I would only be home for like, a week and maybe 2 weeks, at the longest, maybe a month. Um,
mm,
and he was just like, and my mom kept saying, "He asks for you almost every single day, and he wonders why you left." Because again, my nephew and I,
oh,
we were like, he was my homie when we he was my homie. I mean, the moment he
yeah.
was born, we were just peas in a pod, and my brother's like, You just, like, completely took over." And I was like, "Yes, he's mine now. He's mine now." And we did everything together,
Oh.
and then it was like, and I never really thought about that. I thought, "Okay, he's little, he's not gonna even really know, he's not gonna miss me." And my mom is like, "You literally upended his life because you guys did literally everything together." And he thought I was kinda be like, "Oh, she's gone for the weekend," and then I was gone for months at a time. And finally, it got to me, and, too much, and he's like, "Are you ever coming back home?" And it broke my heart. And I was like, "Okay." And my mom was like, "Get it
Oh.
together and figure it out." And I was like, "But I love what I'm doing. I love how I'm doing it." And she was like,
Mhm, mhm.
"It's time." And so I was like, "Yep, it's time." When your nephew and your mom are like letting you know to make some
Yeah.
decisions,
Yeah,
get
get
it
your hind
together.
parts back here.
Yes, exactly. And that's the G version. And so when I got back, I was like, I loved how I was practicing medicine. I loved what I was doing. It was fulfilling. It was like really feeding my soul, my spirit,
Yes.
because I knew I was doing good work. And so when I got back to the US, it was like, okay, I'm going to try to fit this, what do they say, square into this circle, or circle into this square peg, or what, square peg in this circle hole,
Vice
however they
versa,
call it.
yeah, it
Yeah.
don't fit. Okay,
And
keep
it just
going.
don't work. Yeah, whatever it is, it doesn't work.
Right,
But I was like, "But I can do it," S on my chest, I'll figure it out. All I gotta do is, like, rework some things, and once they realize how I'm really practicing, and they're gonna just jump on board and allow me to do all
yes,
the things, like, "Go get it,
yes,
so I promise."
yes.
And no. It was like, you're spending too much time with patients, like, all the things that I had grown
Yeah,
accustomed to doing and asking questions. They're like, "You're spending too much time with patients, number 1." I had, I don't know, got written up multiple times, too many times to be counted, and I just was like, "I can't do the thing that you want me to do in the time that you want me to do it when I know there's another way. I can't go back to doing it that way.
right,
I just can't." And so that was more of an issue, not because, again, it wasn't what I was doing, but it was the how.
right,
And I was like, "Okay, I
right,
can't really do
right,
this." And so I knew I had to make a shift, but I'm like, "Well, what else am I gonna do? I'll just, try to keep working in this system that's not working for me, thinking that things will eventually change, or someone will make a shift, or someone will recognize," and it never happened. And so during this time, I got an opportunity to work for the government. I was a women's health consultant to the Surgeon General, and that was a
uh,
wonderful job.
of the
Yes.
United States, y'all, not the Surgeon General of, like, Baltimore County, of the United States. Go ahead.
Yes, and it was, I had to say, as close to a dream job as you would think of, because I was able to see, like, 1, how the sausage was made, but actually able to affect real change in how
Change,
that sausage was made.
right.
And just being able to interface with so many people who are involved with women's health across the country, across the world, was just amazing. And so everything, again, was going along swimmingly. Alignment, check. Love my job, check. Paid well, check. And then the administration changed. Uncheck, uncheck, uncheck. um, my job got to be to the point that, like, I can't sustain this, and I knew that wasn't going to be sustainable for any long-term period, and to the point I was like, "This is potentially could be dangerous." Um, so I
Oh,
was like, "You gotta get out of here. You gotta get out of here." And so I was like, "You know how to take care of patients. That's what you know how to do." I
that's
was
how
thinking
you
about
know,
running a
yep.
nonprofit. I was thinking about, "Oh, maybe I'll go get my MBA," but my mom had threatened me. She's like, "Go to school one more time and see what happens. Go to school for something else. Go to school one more time and see what happens." And I'm like, "I'm grown. I got this." But, when, your mom tells you to do something, like, and I'm like, that wasn't an idle threat. I feel like there was something coming after that. So I was like, well, maybe I need to
Oh my
just put that
gosh.
on pause for a second.
Okay, wait, hold on. Let's just shout
Yeah.
out your mama. You good and grown, and she still can put you in your place, like, for
Okay.
real, like,
Just like that. Just like that.
shout out
And
to the
so
mamas. Go ahead.
yes, yes, long distance, growing and everything. Because I do respect her, she's been a supporter of
Mhm.
me for everything I've done.
Yep, yep.
She has wisdom far beyond my years, and again, she can see, I'm a go-getter, I'm that A-type
Yeah,
personality.
yeah,
Sometimes I don't see the dangers that lie ahead, and she's like, "It's a recipe for disaster." And I don't always receive it initially as it's dispensed, as given, but my mom is usually right on. So with that, kinda ominous kinda threat, I was like, "Okay, well, maybe I'll just stick with what I know." And so I was like, "I know how to take care of people." And so that's what I did. I was like, "I'm gonna open up my own firm and go from there." Now, I had no business experience. I had no experience with all the other stuff,
oh,
but I knew how to take care of. So I was like, "We're gonna start there." But I have to say, fast forward 5 years, it was the best decision that I've ever made for myself personally and professionally. And now we have an
Wait a
integrated.
minute. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
ma'am.
Before you get into your wonderful center, your firm,
Yeah.
so that is what holds people back.
Mhm.
I don't know how. I know how to take care of patients. I know how to do a C-section. What I
Mhm.
don't know is dot, 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 dot. And because I don't know, that's going to affect my money. And
Mhm.
a lot of people stay where they are because they need the security of a check, a dependable
Mhm.
check coming in once a month, every 2 weeks.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't want to
And
skip.
trust me, I needed those things too. I mean,
Boom.
trust me, that
I
was
know you
not.
did. I know you
Yeah,
did.
that
So
was,
that's
trust
what I'm
me.
saying. I know you did. So
Yeah.
tell us how did you say, okay, I need this check. I don't know how to run a business, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Like just give us a peek
Ooh.
into what was going on in your brain that allowed you to take that step forward.
Well, one of the things I know is I'm a visual learner. So if I have to write everything down, and I'm talking like you should see my office, my home, sticky notes are everywhere because I have to write everything down. If I write it down, I can see it, I connect to it, I can remember where I put it, all those things. So in terms of running a business or a practice or a firm, that's called a business plan. So my thing is you need to write this down and write all these like,
All
ideas that
right.
you and all these things that you've written down and jotted down on all these sticky notes, start putting them into a business plan. And I realized when I went around asking, all my friends, things, people, they're like, I don't have a business plan. I'm like, how did you get started? And again, I was like, I can't operate that way. That's not going to work for me. So I put all of my ideas into a business plan. And I had a couple of people read it, a couple, banks reviewed it. And so for me to be able to see it, my thing is, okay, I can see this. And people had reviewed it. Some of them were like, that's never going to work. And I'm like, but you know what? The vision wasn't given to you, it was given to me. So respectfully, I'm going to decline that
Yeah.
advice.
Well, keep it moving.
And just and move on because there were certain things that I knew that if I'm gonna do this, this has to be a part of it because that's not otherwise it won't be a reflection of me.
Right.
And so once I had the business plan and I could see it and I could review it and I could touch it and I can go back to it, I can refer to it, it was then like, okay, doing the basics of finding a place and doing all those things. And one thing I realized, like, wow, yeah, I mean, I knew I was gonna take a hit salary wise. That wasn't even a thing when I, finally got close enough and, told people that I was, getting ready to open up my own firm, it was, you'll be back in 3 years. You'll be back before the end of 3 years. And it wasn't just one person, like all my colleagues were like sending me the same message. And I'm thinking, for no other reason, I'm a Taurus. So for no
Yes.
other reason, if for no other reason besides I'm stubborn, what I won't be doing is coming back
It's
to this
coming
place.
back.
It's
They just
coming back
poured
to this
gasoline
place
on your fire.
on a
Woo.
fire, yes,
Wow. Mm.
and I don't wanna say doing it out of spite, but my thing is what I'm not doing is coming back here because that
Mm.
means it'll be failure, and that's not necessarily the motivation just to not fail because, again, there was so many times between then and now that it was, like, epic level failure. Just thinking that I could do more than what I could do by myself. And that's kind of I knew there was gonna be a team, but I realized I needed help way sooner than I thought I was gonna need.
Yeah.
And just really realizing like I was spent a whole bunch of money before the doors even opened. And I'm thinking, What? Like, if you build it, they'll come. Isn't that what they said?" So I was like, "I built it. They're just gonna like when I open the doors, they're just gonna flood in." And that's not how it was. And during that first
It wasn't like Black Friday. You just
oh,
open the
no.
doors
It was
and
not, and
trampled in.
just trample people coming in. I wish that was the case, but it wasn't. It
Okay.
wasn't at all. It was you open the doors and there were crickets. I was like, "Is the sign open? Are the lights on? Do people know we're here?" That kind of thing. And it was I don't wanna say it was disappointing, but I was semi scared that I had made the wrong decision because 'cause I'm like, "I know this is what I was meant to do. I know this was how I was meant to practice." And I know I prayed about this enough that I got, the okay and I got, go forth, prosper, that kind of thing. I got that messaging. I know I didn't mishear, but I didn't think it was gonna look like this. And it was a good 6 months before things started like literally picking up. And there were some dark days in that first 6 months because I was like, "Okay, the money is running out." And I had established a lifestyle to which I was accustomed, and I wanted to
Mhm.
maintain that.
Yes.
And so there were some I was like, "Okay, you're gonna have to start eliminating some stuff because you cannot maintain this, period. Let's just." And at the time, I wasn't married, so it was me and only me. And so it was between me and my dog. That's the only person I had to take care of. And, I got up and went whenever I wanted. I traveled whenever I wanted. And when I went away, I bought. Like, I was like,
Wow.
that kind of thing.
Wow.
And it was like, okay, this isn't gonna work accordingly. You had savings, all those things, but it was still a matter of it was a humbling experience. It was humbling in a good way. Like, one, you don't have to have all of these things and still feel good about yourself, still do good work.
Oh. Oh, yes.
Um,
Oh, yes.
and it was a combination of things. There were so many lessons in that 6 months. There were nights that it was like, "Okay, have I made a mistake? And if I have now, what am I gonna do? Can I go back? Should I go back? Maybe I'll do something part-time or just to make ends meet." And my things but that wasn't part of the messaging. That wasn't part of the business plan. That wasn't part of what you heard. So are you gonna be disobedient or are you gonna keep doing
Uh,
what you know to be
uh,
done and listen? Yes,
well,
ma'am.
okay, hold on one second. You said that's not a part of what you heard.
Mhm.
Who's talking to you? Who's giving you these
Jesus,
instructions?
the Holy Spirit.
The Holy Spirit is giving you these instructions. Okay,
Mhm.
so that's
Yes.
that's key. That this was not you just kind of willy nilly coming up with some stuff. This was your assignment.
Yeah, I mean, I even talked to my parents about it, and my dad couldn't quite understand. He's like, "You gonna give up a good job, and they're paying you, and you like what you're doing, and they're paying you, and XYZ, and they're paying
And
you,
they're paying you.
and you and they're paying you, and you're not and you're gonna do what?" Like, that was his sticking point, like, "What are you doing?" Like
Oh god.
and again, from their frame of reference, my dad worked at one job, same company, pretty much until he retired. And my thing is, there's no way that would never be me. Like, that's just not the mindset I had for myself. Even now, like, there's always something we're, doing different in this firm, and I'm still doing other things, whether it's from speaking engagements to courses or whatever it is.
Right,
Like,
right.
it's still work, but it's not I can't just stay here doing the same thing the same way for, I don't know, 40 years. Like, that was wild to me.
Wow. Wow.
Like, I can't even think about, like, doing that. And so that was his frame of reference, like, you get a job that pays you well, provides for your family, and you stay there. Like, why what are you doing looking for some other opportunity? What is that about? My mom
Oh
had a
gosh.
different frame of reference in that she understood that that wasn't gonna be me, but she also couldn't understand, like, well, what are you gonna do for money? Like, what are you gonna do for this? Like, what are you gonna do for, like, all those different what ifs. And those are all the what ifs that I had already thought about
Thought in,
multiple
yeah.
times and then some. Because
Right,
when you come
right.
home and, you're coming home, for me at least, I was coming home, and as much as I love my dog, like, he wasn't, he didn't have a job. So there was no other income coming into our household. Um,
That's
and so there were
funny.
some nights where it was sad, and I mean, sad, I'm talking tears sad, and it was scared, and I was confused, and I was angry, and I was disappointed, like, all the emotions that you can possibly think of, but yet when I would go to work, I was still happy. Like, that was the difference. I was like,
Mm.
it wasn't drudgery going to work, and I wanna replace happy with joy. Like, I loved going to work. And this was before the book was full. I still loved going to work because even if there was only one person I was seeing the whole entire day, like, they got every single ounce of me. And I was
Oh,
so like, I was loving it.
oh,
I was loving it. And I never felt that way how I was practicing before. Never. Maybe when I was like, very, very, very new before, you get downtrodden by the system. Um, but no, I loved going to work. I mean, every single day. And then as our team grew and we were able to, grow and expand and change locations and do all the things from the now to then, it never changed. Like, I still loved going to work and I
wow.
still love going to work. I love who I'm working with.
Mm.
I love how we're working. And it was just that 6 month that was, I guess, again, the humbling aspect of it and just holding on to, okay, but this is where you're supposed to be. Keep going. And It was a build it and they'll come. They'll just come later than you anticipated.
Anticipated. It will come a little bit slower
Yes.
than you
Yeah.
thought, but
Yeah,
they
because there was
came.
some work that I had to do, and I realized if
Right.
they had just flooded the doors on day 1,
You
there
wouldn't
was
have
a
been
lot of
ready.
lessons that yeah, 1, you're right, I wouldn't have been ready because there weren't systems in place that needed to have been in place. There weren't,
Mhm,
standard
mhm.
operating procedures that needed to be in place. Again, I did not know how to run a firm. I didn't know how to run a practice, and there were people who needed to be in place so that we would be ready when those blessings did come. And so those were the things that I was doing in those first 6 months, preparing for that bounty. But
Mm,
again, when you're in it, you don't really see it until you're
yeah,
like, "Oh, hindsight, that's why." And until I got that lesson and, was able to hold on to that I was being prepared for something,
wow.
I would have been completely, messed up should it have been the way I thought it was gonna be. I
Right,
probably would have been out of business by now
right.
because I would have there would have been just no infrastructure.
Yep, yep. God is in control. We thank him for that. And look, you could have given up. Like you really could have closed the doors and given up and you didn't. So
Yeah.
kudos to you. So what year was that you started it?
2018, 2017 and 2018. It was kinda like the end of 2017 into 2018.
Okay. And so we now have a thriving center. Tell us about what you created and what services you provide.
Well, we have grown, and so when we first started, it was the only people I was, again, OB-GYN, but I really wanted to focus on complex women's health challenges, the uterine fibroids, the endometriosis, the PCOS, infertility challenges or fertility challenges, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, menstrual dysfunction, menopausal symptoms, and those things that, like, again, we don't really have good ways to treat or address in conventional
Right.
medicine. And as an acupuncturist and an herbalist, and I think I omitted where that all happened, but that happened when I came back to the US. I was like, I got to hone my skills if I'm going to have this integrative approach. So I went to acupuncture school, and during that time,
So you did get a
we had
little bit more education.
yes, more education, an undercover education, yes, but it
Yes.
wasn't an MBA. It
Mhm.
was a gap about, formalizing my training, so things that I knew, but I could actually put the theory behind it, and then be able to put that theory into practice. So acupuncture school, and then again, I knew I could, do those aspects, so the integrative approach was already in me as a provider and practitioner, but then there were other things that I'm like, I can do, but I wanna be able to, like, stay in my lane and be able to do these things to the best of
Right.
my ability.
Right.
I wanna be the subject matter expert, but I know I can't do this by myself. And so I knew I wanted, a vaginal steam facilitator. I had been vaginal steaming again since I started menstruating. It was a part of, like, our women's circles, part of, like, a rite of passage when we became women or got that first menstruation. So I was like, "Okay, vaginal steaming," and at that time, vaginal
Wow.
steaming was like a luxury item. I'm like, "We were doing that, like, in my mom's kitchen, and, like, what are they talking about?" And I was like,
We
"Maybe
got
it's something
boutiques.
different." Yeah, and I'm like, "We've been doing that, like, what are
Oh
they
my
talking about?"
gosh.
And so I wanted to bring I guess, more homegrown, holistic approach to vaginal steaming that it's not just for these boutique LA, bi-coastal types. No, you can do this in your home, and it's not just for, luxury purposes. No, it's for healing purposes. Like, you steam with
Right.
purpose.
Right.
And again, knowing the herbs and knowing, the length of time and what herbs treat certain conditions, that kind of thing. And so, April Cohen she's our vaginal steam facilitator. And so she was one of the first people that joined our team. I knew I wanted a health and wellness coach, and that's, I met Goss, and we had, I'd worked with her before. And so it started off with people that I knew, that did the things that I wanted and I knew I could work with, or we shared, our faith, our focus, things of that nature. And so I really wanted people who aligned with me in
Yeah.
multiple ways, not in all ways, but aligned in me with like the ways that were core to my identity and my own being professionally and personally, so that when we come and, share a space, especially a health and wellness space, that we're walking together and that they still have different ideas to bring to the table. And so then it started to just kind of blossom: a pelvic floor physical therapist, Reiki practitioners, a doula, a lactation consultant, a postpartum doula, aromatherapy and foot soaks, a yoga therapist, dance movement therapy, Thai yoga body work, just so many. If you go to the website, you'll see everyone.
Amazing. I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
You
I
have
really
a huge team too. How many people are working with you now?
right now 15, I believe 15.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
and again, it was because I wanted our team to be indicative of what healthcare could be, what it
Mm,
should be, and that it's possible. And that you don't necessarily, and then, again, it's not an either or. And I think you mentioned this earlier on. It's not conventional medicine or traditional medicine. It's not one against the other. It's the synergy of the two together
mhm.
because honestly, we can't have one without the other. There's certain things that traditional medicine does way better than conventional. And there are things that conventional medicine it does way better. Like, I don't want my acupuncturist, setting my bone straight after I break it. What I do want my acupuncturist to do is treat it after they set the bone, after the cast comes off, so that thing heals stronger than it ever was even beforehand.
Before. Wow.
So
Wow.
those are things like that's one of the examples that I use. And even if you, like, for instance, even if you've had a myomectomy or you've had, a surgery to review, take out fibroids, okay, now's the time that we can start making these lifestyle changes so they don't come back so that you don't ever have to deal with fibroids again. This is
Okay.
where the marriage comes in, the
Yeah.
synergy comes in.
We've got a problem, y'all. There is too much to do and not enough time. Your personal life takes a back seat to a profession that you have spent decades training for. Your calling seems to be burdensome in a system that does not prioritize your well being. You do not have to live this way. When you take care of patients, who takes care of you? I'm Dr. V, a burnout consultant, and you need me as your personal coach. I take care of the healthcare provider that takes care of everybody else. Go to officevisitswithdrv.com and click on the coaching tab. Schedule a free discovery interview so I can learn more about the life that you need to be fulfilled. All right, so we're close to the end of the
Yes.
episode.
Okay.
And you guys, she's going to tell us where you can go to read all about her center, the Eudaimonia Center
Yes, ma'am.
in
Uh-huh.
Maryland. Okay. So just real quick, just a
Right.
real snippet for my
Yes.
listeners. This is kind of a detour off the burnout.
Okay.
Because patients have asked me this, like, do I have to have surgery? Are they going to come back? Real quick, just give us maybe, one or two things that they can do to help keep the fibroids from coming back.
Whether you have fibroids now or you've had surgical intervention to remove them, the 3 top things are going to be your diet, your exercise, and really honing in on and I won't even say exercise, but movement, but really honing on your energy and your emotional health. For the
Mm,
diet, a lot of things we put in our bodies are endocrine disruptors or estrogen builders or things that are going to synergistically build more estrogen in the body and fibroids and endometriosis are estrogen dependent. So
love it.
again,
Mm-hmm.
as you're, get off birth control, that's another thing you can
Mm,
do. Again, another endocrine disruptor. In terms of movement, do things according to look at your blood type. Look at how your body and what your body needs in terms of movement. Some people need that, high intensity interval training. Some people need the restorative nature of a yoga and then looking at, again, how to maintain that. And this is when you have conditions, this isn't something that you're going to take a pill and just be good. No, this is a lifestyle shift. So really trying to make modifications on a day-to-day basis that are going to help you move toward that goal. And I always say acupuncture. Acupuncture has been one of the best things for me. And so many people don't even know an acupuncturist or they're not even familiar with what acupuncture can do. But it's about that energy healing. It's about that movement of emotions and being able to process emotions more thoroughly. And again, we use that adjacent and synergistically with our mental health therapy and, therapy as well, because it's synergy and it all works together.
as you are talking, like the whole time, I'm like, I'm in the presence of greatness.
Amen. Thank you.
I'm in the presence of greatness. Like, what would have happened? This is a rhetorical question, but what would have
Mhm.
happened if you would have stayed where you were? Like,
I'd be on a mental break. I'll tell you where I'll be on a mental leave somewhere, taking a 12-week leave of absence because I would have had a breakdown. I'll
you
tell you.
you would have had a breakdown. But what
Oh,
about
yeah.
all the people that are benefiting from your center, from the modalities that you use to treat. Like, I mean, honest, all the stuff you're talking about, like my patients have all asked me, and I've like done my little up to date or, my little journal
Right.
article search, and I can't find anything. And
Because
I'm
it's not
just,
supported by
it's
conventional
exactly.
medicine.
And they're not
Yeah.
going to study it. And
No.
so, what I want to take away from this, and y'all, anytime I bring somebody on my podcast, I learn from them as well. And A is you got a vision, you got an assignment, and you stuck to it no matter what,
Right.
no matter what. And B, there is some value. There is some value that you provide,
Yes.
and you knew it. You knew
Yeah.
it. So you've really just kind of piqued my interest. And if you're doing that for me, I know my listeners are like, well, where can I find her? How do we get to her? And can I make an appointment? And does she take televisits and all of this stuff? So please, please, please tell us how, if listeners want to get in touch with you in the future or learn from you in the future, how do they do that?
One, continue listening to our podcast, which is Women's Health, Wisdom, and Wine. Dr. Renato has blessed us, and she's been on her second episode. Part 2 is dropped today. You can catch part 1 last Wednesday. So the podcast is for people who, just can't get to, the DMV area. We're opening up our second office in Arlington. So even if you can't get to the DMV, you can know that there are options out there. We connect people no matter where you are, what zip code, even if you can't get here. You can go to our website, which is www.laurenawhite.com. You can, listen to us, pretty much anywhere you are podcast wise. We're on Instagram at the Eudaimonia Center, Facebook, the Eudaimonia Center. Find me on LinkedIn, just my first and last name. So all the different places.
Wait a
I think
minute.
those are all the places that you can find us.
Okay, so y'all, she had to explain to me before we started. I'm like, how do you say this? Because it
Mhm.
doesn't, it's not spelled how you say it.
Right.
So spell it for us real quick and tell them what eudaimonia means.
Okay. Eudaimonia is EUDAIMONIA. And eudaimonia is a Greek word and it means human flourishing. And when I opened our firm, I wanted something, something that meant something to me. And I wanted that it was representative, indicative of what was going to happen once the moment you crossed our threshold. When you step into our firm, step into our practice, step into a treatment room, you're not going to go out the same way you came back in. And as long as we can have, signs of flourishing and moving toward your health and wellness goals, that's our goal. And every time we want there to be a healing experience every time you come in contact with anyone on our team. So eudaimonia means human flourishing because that's the goal and the objective every time we come in contact with our firm.
So normally I tell people to kind of, is there something, the last little thing you want to say, but I would just end it right there. We're meant to flourish.
Yes.
We are not
Yes.
supposed to be dying on the vine. We are meant to flourish. So
Indeed.
you all, her podcast is phenomenal. Like all of these little nuggets and jewels and the spirit and the energy behind it. I feel it comes from a truly authentic place. And spirit feel like there's something special about the therapy. And just looking at your website, it just blew my mind. So
Thank
you all of this information, because I know y'all didn't write down the spelling of eudaimonia, but this will all be in the show notes, and we will have the appropriate links. And I encourage you to go check her out and just get more knowledge. But let's not forget, we're here for burnout. So she went from burned out to flourishing.
Yes.
And thank you so much for sharing your story and letting us see what's possible.
Yes.
We don't have to stay stuck. We don't
Yes.
have to stay stuck. So I'm
Thank you,
going to
Dr.
wrap it
Renato, for
up.
the invitation. I appreciate it.
You are so welcome. Thank you so much. And you all, we will see you next time on Office Visits with Dr. V. Thanks for listening to Office Visits with Dr. V. I would love to stay connected, so please follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Office Visits with Dr. V and on LinkedIn at Benita Vernado, MD. Share this information with your friends and colleagues. Like and subscribe, you know the drill. Also, go to officevisitswithdrv.com/connect and leave your email to receive updates on everything that Dr. V is doing to introduce you to your new life.